Hello, miladies of inestimable value. Some women enter a man's life like a chapter. A Sigma female enters like an unexpected plot twist he can't skip. There's a strange phenomenon psychologists quietly whisper about. The human brain remembers unpredictability 40% longer than familiarity, and that's exactly why men become obsessed with Sigma females without even realizing it. She doesn't behave like a predictable character in their story. She behaves like the page that refuses to turn until they've understood it. Sigma females don't chase, compete, or perform. They simply exist with a level of emotional self-governance that makes most men feel like they accidentally bumped into a premium, limited edition personality they were never prepared for. She's not mysterious on purpose. She just lives in a mental neighborhood with very high rent, and most people can't afford to stay there long. And yet, every man who encounters her ends up trying. He becomes curious, confused, intrigued, and occasionally a little stressed, wondering why the one woman who isn't impressed by anything he does is the only woman he thinks about in the shower, at work, and unfortunately, even during Zoom meetings. She doesn't lure men in with charm. She destabilizes their entire emotional Wi-Fi without touching a single setting. That's the level of quiet chaos you're about to understand. Because today, we're diving into why men are obsessively drawn to Sigma females, even though most of them have no clue it's happening. Get ready. This isn't the usual cliché explanation. This is the real, raw, psychological truth they never saw coming. Number 1, she doesn't fight for attention. She forces reflection. A Sigma female doesn't compete for attention like most people do. She doesn't have to. Men quickly realize that she isn't constantly trying to prove her worth, isn't fishing for compliments, and isn't performing for approval. That alone is enough to make them obsessed, because it's rare. But the deeper reason she draws them in so powerfully is far more subtle and far more dangerous to their egos. She forces reflection. When a man interacts with a Sigma female, he doesn't just notice her presence, he notices himself. Every word she says, every pause she takes, every subtle action mirrors back things he didn't know he was carrying. It's not judgmental, it's just reality. And that is both fascinating and terrifying. Men start seeing patterns in their own behavior, realizing how often they chase validation, how little they truly know themselves, and how many masks they wear in their everyday lives. She doesn't tell them what to do or how to feel. She doesn't even explicitly call out flaws. Her mere presence makes a man confront them. The obsession starts here. A Sigma female doesn't just captivate attention, she captivates the mind. Men can't stop thinking about the conversations, the silences, the small inconsistencies, because with her, every interaction becomes a mirror. They begin to analyze themselves, trying to figure out why her calm, unshakable composure unsettles them so much. It's exhausting and addictive at the same time. Men are drawn back, not because of what she gives them, but because of what she makes them face within themselves. They are not in control of the dynamic, she is. And that's exactly why they don't just like her, they obsess over her. They crave that reflection, that rare and uncomfortable truth, because it forces them to grow, to question, and to see parts of themselves they've buried or ignored. A Sigma female doesn't need to fight for attention. She doesn't need to chase. She doesn't need to perform. She simply exists as a living reflection, and in doing so, she makes men chase a version of themselves they can't fully reach, and they don't even know it. Number 2, she treats emotional intimacy like a private currency. A Sigma female doesn't hand out emotional intimacy the way most people do. For her, it's not a casual exchange or a free-flowing reward for attention, charm, or effort. It's a carefully guarded currency, something rare and valuable, something that can't be faked or rushed. Men often don't even realize how much they crave it until they notice that it isn't automatically available. And that craving is where obsession begins. She decides when, how, and to whom she gives her trust and vulnerability. Every smile, every meaningful glance, every moment of genuine connection feels earned because in her world, it is. Men are instantly drawn in because this isn't the shallow, predictable emotional access they are used to. With her, they have to prove something, not to her, but to themselves, before they can truly experience the depth she offers. It's rare, it's intoxicating, and it makes them chase a version of intimacy they didn't even know existed. The danger of this kind of presence is that men start over-analyzing every interaction, every word, every pause. They start wondering why she responds the way she does, why she holds back certain reactions, why her trust is selective. That selective investment turns men into students of her energy, trying to earn small fragments of what she's willing to share. And because emotional intimacy is tied so closely to their sense of connection and validation, the more they chase it, the more consumed they become. She isn't manipulative. She isn't playing games. She simply values herself and her inner world highly enough not to give it away carelessly. And that principle, that quiet confidence and self-respect, becomes magnetic. Men obsess over her not because she forces it, but because she raises the stakes in a way no one else does. She treats her emotions like a private, precious asset, and men are compelled to seek it, not because she's cruel, but because she's rare, intentional, and untouchable in her authenticity. That is the invisible pull that turns casual interest into obsession, and once they're hooked, they can't help but stay entranced. Number 3. She creates mystery without trying. A Sigma female doesn't have to try to be mysterious. Her life, her thoughts, her habits, and even the way she moves through the world are naturally layered and complex. Men are drawn to her not because she's playing a role or hiding behind secrets, but because she genuinely operates on a level most people can't access. That authenticity creates a kind of intrigue that feels impossible to resist. Every interaction with her leaves men with more questions than answers, not because she's evasive, but because her existence simply can't be summarized or simplified. She doesn't need to stage drama or cultivate an illusion. She lives with her own rhythm, one that doesn't bend to expectation. Men are fascinated because she embodies unpredictability without chaos. She has routines, passions, and priorities that are her own, and she doesn't feel the need to explain them. That alone makes her magnetic. Men start noticing the gaps they can't fill, the glimpses of her life, her thoughts, her private world, and it pulls them in deeper than any flirtation or charm could. The obsession starts in the small, subtle ways. Her laughter that isn't overperformed, her brief smiles that hint at stories untold, the calm confidence she carries while others scramble to impress. All of it signals that there's a dimension of her mind and life that they cannot reach without effort, and even then, they might only scratch the surface. This creates a tension that feels electric and addictive. Men become fascinated with figuring her out, decoding her patterns, and chasing the layers they can't immediately see. They overanalyze and overthink, but no matter how much they try, the Sigma female remains inherently elusive. It's not manipulation. It's the natural effect of someone who values herself, lives fully in her own world, and doesn't feel the need to justify her existence to anyone. That effortless, unintentional mystery becomes a powerful magnet, leaving men drawn in, obsessed, and often unaware that what captivates them isn't what she shows, but what she naturally protects, the depth of her authentic self. Number 4, she doesn't fear distance, she controls it. A Sigma female doesn't panic when distance appears, and she doesn't cling when a man drifts. She treats emotional and physical space like a tool, not a threat. That alone confuses men because they are wired to interpret distance as rejection or a sign to chase harder. With her, it's neither. She controls how close someone can get, and she does it with such effortless precision that men don't even realize they are being guided. Her ability to step back without losing composure or emotional stability is magnetic. Men feel an immediate tension. They want proximity, they crave connection, but they can't just force it. She decides when she's available, how much attention she gives, and when she withdraws, creating a dynamic where men are pulled into her orbit without her ever appearing desperate or manipulative. It's a rare kind of power, the kind that doesn't scream dominance, but silently demands respect. Men become obsessed because she makes them experience longing differently. Instead of filling the gaps with anxiety, she makes them notice the value of presence, the subtlety of attention, and the weight of moments when she does choose to engage. Every interaction carries significance because she controls the ebb and flow. They start paying attention to her patterns, her pauses, her timing, trying to predict her moves, but she rarely lets them. That unpredictability keeps them hooked, always seeking the next interaction, the next glance, the next word. What makes it even more intoxicating is that she doesn't play games. She doesn't pull away to test loyalty or manipulate feelings. She simply values her own rhythm, her own priorities, and her own peace of mind. Men, unused to this level of autonomy in a woman, are drawn into the magnetic push and pull without realizing they are being shaped by it. By controlling distance without fear, she creates a tension that's compelling, addictive, and impossible to ignore. Men are drawn to her because they feel challenged, intrigued, and subtly guided by someone who understands space not as a loss, but as a tool of connection. That quiet control is mesmerizing, and once a man experiences it, he rarely forgets it. Number 5, she doesn't need a man, but she can amplify one. A Sigma female doesn't need a man to validate her existence, her choices, or her happiness. She lives on her own terms, with her own goals, ambitions, and priorities. That alone unsettles most men, because they are used to women who seek approval, attention, or protection. But here's the twist that drives obsession. While she doesn't need a man, she has the rare ability to amplify him, to make him sharper, more confident, and more capable just by being present. Men are drawn to her because they sense that she brings out the best in them without asking for anything in return. She doesn't nag, manipulate, or try to mold him. She simply exists as a mirror and a catalyst, reflecting potential he didn't realize he had. Her presence challenges him to rise, to match her level of independence, intelligence, and intensity. He feels upgraded simply by being around her, even if she never actively pushes him. That subtle, effortless influence is addictive. What makes this dynamic so compelling is the balance of power. He isn't in control, she isn't performing, she isn't there to help him or to complete him. She's there as herself, fully realized, and the effect she has on him is an unintended consequence of her authenticity. Men become obsessed because they crave the boost she brings, the sense that being near her makes them better versions of themselves, and yet they can't command it, replicate it, or fully understand it. The Sigma female's independence doesn't push men away. It draws them closer in a way few women can. They are captivated by her strength, but even more so by the subtle enhancement she offers. She doesn't need him to feel whole, but in her presence, he feels more whole than he has anywhere else. That paradox, her self-sufficiency paired with the quiet power to elevate, creates a magnetic pull that is difficult to resist. Men don't just admire her, they become quietly obsessed with the effect she has on them. trying to figure out how someone so self-contained can make them feel so alive, so capable and so alive to their own potential all at once. Number 6. She sees through status. The way a scientist sees through glass. A Sigma female doesn't care about titles, money, or fame. She doesn't get impressed by power plays, luxury, or social validation, because she measures people by something far deeper: their integrity, authenticity, and how they handle themselves when no one is watching. Most men are used to women who react to status, who respond to displays of wealth or influence. She breaks that pattern entirely, and it unnerves them. They can't rely on the usual tricks, the usual performances that worked elsewhere, and that's precisely why she becomes so compelling. Men are drawn to her because she sees through the facades they put up. She notices the small inconsistencies, the hidden motivations, and the unspoken fears that they try so hard to hide. When a man interacts with her, he suddenly realizes that everything he thought he could hide or control is transparent to her. It's not invasive. It's just the result of her sharp observation and refusal to be distracted by superficial markers. She doesn't judge for sport, but her clarity forces men to confront themselves honestly, and that confrontation is addictive. Her indifference to external validation is another layer of magnetism. She doesn't seek admiration or approval, which flips the usual power dynamic on its head. Instead of chasing attention or elevating a man through flattery, she only interacts with him on the level of substance. That makes her rare, and rarity is irresistible. Men quickly realize that in her presence, their accomplishments or status mean little. Only their character and authenticity matter. This combination, seeing through pretenses and valuing only real substance, creates an obsession in men because it forces them to step up in ways they've never had to. They want her approval not as a reward, but as a validation of their true selves. She doesn't hand it out lightly, and that scarcity fuels desire. In the presence of a Sigma female, a man can't rely on charm or status alone. He becomes obsessed with showing the parts of himself she can't ignore, striving to live up to a standard that is real, demanding, and intoxicatingly elusive. Number 7. She operates with a form of ethical independence. Men rarely see a Sigma. Female doesn't follow rules because society tells her to, and she doesn't bend her moral compass to fit trends or expectations. Her ethics come from a deeply personal place, a code she has built and refined through experience, reflection, and self-awareness. Men are drawn to her not just because of what she does, but because of how she does it. She acts with integrity on her own terms, and that independence in values is both rare and magnetic. It's the kind of strength most men have never encountered in a woman, and it creates an irresistible pull. When a man meets a Sigma female, he senses that she cannot be manipulated, bought, or controlled. She won't compromise herself for approval or status, and she won't follow someone else's agenda just to fit in. That clarity, that internal alignment, forces men to pay attention because it flips the usual dynamic. Suddenly, charm, ego, and superficial effort no longer matter. What matters is authenticity, character, and the ability to operate with integrity in a world that constantly encourages compromise. Men are both challenged and fascinated by this. They see someone who isn't swayed by trends, pressure, or expectations, and they can't help but respect and obsess over the rare combination of freedom and principle. Her ethical independence also puts men in an unusual position. They are forced to evaluate their own values. Being around her highlights where they are inconsistent, where they cut corners, and where they settle for less than their potential. The subtle pressure isn't overt or demanding. It's simply her presence, her way of living with conviction. Men can't ignore it, and over time, they find themselves drawn to her influence, trying to align themselves with the integrity she embodies. This kind of power is quiet, but lethal in its effect. She doesn't need to dominate or compete. Her ethical independence is a force of attraction all on its own. Men become obsessed, not because she seeks attention or admiration, but because her unwavering standards shine a light on their own lives, making them want to rise, reflect, and prove themselves worthy of the rare, uncompromising woman she is. Number 8. She leaves men with a what-if question. They can never answer. A Sigma female has a way of leaving an invisible mark on a man's mind long after she's gone, or even after a brief interaction. She doesn't need to make a dramatic exit or issue grand statements. Her presence alone is enough to leave a lingering question that haunts him. What if I had truly understood her? That question isn't just curiosity. It's a quiet obsession that slowly takes over a man's thoughts. He starts replaying moments, analyzing conversations, and wondering about the layers he couldn't reach. What makes this effect so potent is that it's subtle and unintentional. She doesn't engineer this psychological pull. It's a natural consequence of living authentically and valuing herself. Men encounter her depth, her independence, and her unshakable presence, and it creates a tension they can't resolve. Every decision she makes, every word she says, or doesn't say, becomes a mental puzzle he feels compelled to solve. And the more he tries, the more elusive she becomes. This what if lingers because a Sigma female doesn't exist to be understood or completed. She isn't a prize, a puzzle, or a challenge to be conquered. She's complete on her own. Men, however, are wired to seek resolution. When they fail to achieve it, the question remains open-ended, persistent, and oddly addictive. It taps into a part of them that craves closure, but can't get it. That unresolved energy keeps her alive in their mind far longer than any other woman could. Her influence is not about control or manipulation. It's about the natural effect of a rare presence, someone who is self-contained, confident, and real. Men obsess because she leaves them with the feeling of unfinished business, even if she never intended it. They may try to distract themselves, rationalize it, or move on. But that question, the haunting what if, returns in quiet, persistent waves. It becomes part of their thought patterns, an unshakable echo of someone who showed them something extraordinary without ever asking for anything in return. The power of a Sigma female isn't just in who she is. It's in the lasting void she leaves behind, a void that men unknowingly spend their lives trying to fill. Number 9. She has a psychological delay effect that haunts men. A Sigma female doesn't make her impact immediately. The way she affects a man isn't always visible in the moment. It creeps in slowly, often days after they've interacted. It's not about charm, beauty, or clever words. She leaves subtle impressions that take time to fully register. 3 days later, a man finds himself replaying something she said, a glance she gave, or even a silence she held. That delay is deliberate by nature, not design. It's the natural consequence of someone whose presence operates on layers men aren't used to. Men become obsessed because they can't predict when or how she will affect them. One moment, they feel calm, collected, and unaware of her influence. The next, they are struck by a sudden memory or realization that triggers a cascade of thoughts and emotions they didn't see coming. He questions why he keeps thinking about her, why the way she moved, spoke, or existed in that moment sticks with him. It's an internal echo he can't turn off. What makes this effect so powerful is that it bypasses conscious control. He can't force the impact or rationalize it away, because it doesn't hit logically. It hits emotionally and mentally. She embeds herself into his thought patterns, slowly dominating the mental space he doesn't even realize she occupies. Even mundane interactions become loaded with significance in retrospect, and he can't escape analyzing every detail, trying to understand what made her so different, so memorable, so haunting. The psychological delay turns ordinary men into silent students of her presence. They are drawn into a mental chase that isn't even conscious, trying to decode her essence long after she's gone. That's why she's unforgettable. She doesn't demand attention in the moment, but she lingers, slowly weaving into his mind, becoming a ghost that follows him through his days, thoughts, and quiet moments, making him obsess over her in ways no one else ever could. Number 10. Her energy doesn't compete, it disrupts. Most women are trained to compete for attention, approval, admiration. They perform, they highlight, they push to stand out. A Sigma female doesn't do any of that. Her energy isn't about proving herself or outperforming others. It simply exists, and in its existence, it disrupts everything around her. Men don't just notice her, they feel a shift in themselves when she's near, an internal recalibration that they can't put into words. It's subtle, disorienting, and addictive. Being around her isn't comfortable in a conventional sense. Men feel off balance, not because she's hostile or aggressive, but because she doesn't follow the usual patterns of social energy. Her presence interrupts routines, expectations, and assumptions. He expects normal reactions, predictable responses, or validation for his usual charm, and instead she moves in a way that challenges all of that. It's thrilling, confusing, and magnetic at the same time. What makes this disruption so compelling is that it's not forced or calculated. She doesn't intend to unsettle or control. Her energy is a byproduct of her independence, clarity, and self-possession. Men are drawn in because their usual tactics, their comfortable behaviors, suddenly feel ineffective. They're forced to pay attention in a deeper way, to process her presence rather than just react to it. That creates a psychological pull. They can't ignore her, can't reduce her to familiarity, and can't stop replaying interactions in their minds. In essence, a Sigma female rewires the way men experience energy. She doesn't compete for attention. She alters the internal frequency of everyone around her. That disruption is intoxicating because it's rare, authentic, and impossible to manipulate. Men feel alive, unsettled, and obsessed all at once, without fully understanding why. Her effect lingers long after she's left the room, as men try to recalibrate their internal rhythms to match the energy they briefly encountered, but can never fully capture. Number 11. She doesn't give men the usual behavioral script. Most men are used to predictable patterns in women, the smiles, the compliments, the rehearsed responses. They rely on these familiar scripts to navigate interactions, to feel in control, to gauge interest. A Sigma female throws all of that out the window. She doesn't conform to expectations, and she doesn't operate on social formulas. She responds to situations in real time, based on her own logic, feelings, and priorities, not on what society or anyone else expects. This unpredictability is addictive. Men don't know what she'll do next, how she'll react, or what she's thinking. Every interaction becomes a puzzle, a mystery they feel compelled to decode. It's not chaos, and it's not erratic behavior. She simply exists outside the conventional system. Her responses are precise, deliberate, and unique to her own internal rules. That makes men stay alert, analyzing, and replaying even small exchanges, trying to figure out the logic behind her behavior. What makes it so compelling is that she doesn't offer easy answers. She doesn't explain herself unnecessarily or perform to satisfy curiosity. Men are left chasing fragments, trying to piece together patterns where there may be none, or patterns that are far more complex than they expected. Every pause, every word, every subtle action carries weight, because they can't rely on social shorthand to interpret it. She forces men to engage with her fully, intellectually and emotionally, rather than letting them coast on assumption or routine. The result is obsession. Men are drawn to her because she rewires their usual approach to interaction. They can't predict, manipulate, or control her. Their usual operating system fails, and she becomes an unsolvable equation that fascinates them. That tension, being simultaneously challenged, intrigued, and unable to fully grasp her, is what keeps them hooked. A Sigma female doesn't just break the script. She makes men want to write a new one they can never quite finish. Number 12. Her silence has a strange dominance. Men respect a Sigma. Female's silence isn't empty or timid. It's loaded with purpose. She doesn't fill every gap with words, explanations, or reactions. Instead, she lets moments breathe, and in doing so, she creates a presence that men instinctively notice and respect. Her silence isn't a sign of weakness or shyness. It's a signal of confidence and self-possession. Men feel it immediately, even if they can't put it into words, and it triggers a subtle shift in their behavior. Around her, men start to measure themselves differently. They subconsciously check their words, their tone, and their intentions, because her quiet presence feels like a mirror reflecting their true selves. She doesn't demand attention, but her lack of verbal noise forces others to engage with her on a deeper, more deliberate level. Men feel compelled to qualify themselves, not in a superficial, performative way, but in the sense that her standard for engagement is higher than anything they're used to encountering. The effect is magnetic because it flips social dynamics. Most women talk, explain, and justify to gain influence or control. She doesn't need to. Her silence itself holds the power. It creates tension, curiosity, and focus. Men notice her without realizing why, and every unspoken moment becomes significant. They analyze, reflect, and often overthink interactions, trying to interpret meaning where none is forced, but every gesture or pause carries weight simply because she chooses to allow it space. Her silence isn't about withdrawal. It's about authority. She communicates through presence rather than chatter, teaching men, without saying a word, how to engage, respect, and navigate her world. That quiet dominance is irresistible. Men become drawn in because they feel challenged, intrigued, and subtly held accountable in her presence. She doesn't need to speak to assert power. She doesn't need to react to prove influence. Her silence alone commands it, creating an unspoken magnetic pull that most men can't resist and rarely forget. Conclusion. Sigma females are not defined by charm, beauty, or conventional social influence. They don't follow scripts, seek validation, or perform to please anyone. Their power is subtle, internal, and profoundly disruptive. They impact men in ways that words alone cannot capture, through silence, presence, unpredictability, and an unwavering commitment to their own authenticity. Men become obsessed not because they are seduced or impressed, but because a Sigma female holds up a mirror they can't look away from. She forces them to confront their own insecurities, reevaluate their motives, and recognize truths they often hide from themselves. Her effect lingers long after she's gone. She doesn't chase attention, offer easy access, or cater to expectation. She simply exists with a precision, independence, and depth that most men have never encountered. That presence rewires the way they think, the way they feel, and the way they interact, not just with her, but with the world. She creates reflection, intrigue, challenge, and longing without trying, and that combination is irresistible. She is rare, untouchable in her authenticity, and unforgettable in her impact. Understanding why men are obsessed with Sigma females is not about explaining charm or attraction in the usual sense. It's about recognizing the subtle, often invisible ways a truly independent, self-governed woman reshapes perception, challenges ego, and leaves a permanent impression that cannot be ignored or forgotten. She doesn't just exist in a room. She exists in the mind, the heart, and the very thoughts of those who encounter her. If this content opened your eyes to the extraordinary influence of Sigma females, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful insights. Like this video to show your support, comment below with your thoughts or experiences, and share it with anyone who needs to understand the magnetic pull of a Sigma female. Dive deeper, stay curious, and witness the rare, unforgettable presence of a Sigma female in action.